Hi, this is Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. This is another segment of the series I've been doing on white supremacy, and in order for us to really understand the nature of what's happening now, and a lot of people, what they'll say from time to time is, you're a pastor, why don't you talk about more spiritual matters? Why are you just talk about the Bible? And when people say that, it's because they really don't understand the timing or what's going on or what's happening. And most of them don't even understand the Bible, which is why they would say those things, because the Bible addresses these type of things. And it's, I won't say it's coded language, because it's not really coded language in the Bible, but the Bible says that God conceals things, and it is the job of the king to seek these things out and search these things out. So what our job is to do, what my job is to do, is to search out the scriptures for us to understand the time and the season that we're in, for us to discern properly what is happening. But anyway, let's talk about this. First of all, I'll make this controversial statement, and you've been following this, and I would ask you also, before we get started, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please hit the notification button so the time we do a video, you'll get notified about it. Also, please share it as much as possible. If you see value in information is being given, please share it, because I think it's really important information, especially in these days that we live in. But, this whole idea of white supremacy is a myth, right? And I'm going to explain it to you, and I'm going to give you some factual evidence. Supremacy is a word that's being thrown out, and it's thrown out over and over again. That's one of the main tools of propaganda that they perfected in Germany, Nazi Germany. Joseph Goebbels was the Ministry of Propaganda. Edward Bernays actually took it over, and he changed the idea of propaganda because it got such a bad name. And he changed it now, propaganda, to public marketing and advertising. Some of the main tools that they use, that they developed, is based on propaganda. And one of the rules of propaganda is if you repeat a phrase over and over again, eventually, even if it's a lie, it becomes truth. It becomes reality. And so that's what's happening. They keep repeating the same phrase over and over again, and they say it to you as though it's a foregone conclusion, and they do it in a way that says, if you disagree with this, then you just don't know. You're stupid, idiotic. You don't know what's going on. But it's one of the greatest forms of deception that's out there. They keep repeating these phrases. It puts Black people in defense mode. It puts white liberals in guilt mode, and it always continues to keep the tension between the groups of people. Now, let me tell you why, and then I'm going to explain to you what it really is. It's not white supremacy, but I'm going to explain to you really what it is. So let me tell you why what we're suffering now in America, especially people of color, has nothing to do with what they call white supremacy. First of all, in America, as far as household income, white Europeans are number 4 on the list. So number 1 on the list of highest household incomes in America right now are Africans, people primarily from Nigeria or Western Africa. They are number 1 in household income in America. Number 2 is Asians. And so you have people from Asia, China, Japan, and those countries. Number 3 are European Jews, and number 4 are white Europeans. So if white supremacy was such a onerous thing, how is it that white people are number 4 on household income? And that's statistics. That's not facts. I mean, it's statistics. It's facts. It's not my opinion or anything like that. And one of the things that's so important for us to understand, excuse me 1 second, let me plug this in because the battery's going low. Sorry about that. A popular phrase nowadays. So we have to look at things factually and not emotionally. And what happens is people in the media promote ideas that stir up your emotions. And so you have to look beyond that and look at the facts. And like I said in my previous video, if you really believe in white supremacy as most people describe white supremacy, you would have to believe that mainstream media is owned by white supremacy, and if mainstream media is owned by white supremacy, then why would we, as people of color, believe what they say? Because one of the jobs, as it's described, of white supremacy is to oppress and keep people of color down, and only look out for the the best interest of white supremacy or white people. Another reason that another fact that shows you that you could know that white supremacy is not the one, that it's not the real power structure that we're facing, is because the powers that be, the people that are promoting this open borders idea, right? So the people that are promoting open borders is the power structure. It's the populist. It's a popular thing in mainstream media that they talk about open borders, and when you start talking about securing the borders, then they will automatically go to, that's white supremacy or no one's illegal and those type of things. But see, you have to understand that that's part of the agenda, and I'll break it down for you, of the global elite, because what we're really facing is a global elite, a group of people, not what we would call white supremacy. See, America, when slavery first came here in 1619, Virginia was the foundation of this nation. And when I say slavery, I'm talking about as it pertains to America. There were Africans and other slaves that were transported to North America before 1619, but it was mainly by the Spanish and the Portuguese and the French. And so, Virginia was the foundation of America. Virginia became the first state, and it was America when it was first founded. And so the foundation for slavery as it pertains to the United States in North America started in 1619 in Virginia. When it first started, it was Africans that were enslaved. There were Irish people, there were white people, others were enslaved. And so because of race theory and race science, and when that occurred, they began to promote the idea that Black people were less evolved. So in my last video, if you get a chance to go listen to it, I talk about Charles Darwin, Galton, and Malthus, and Margaret Sanger, and some of these other people that were eugenicists. This is all globalist ideology. So they began to promote the idea of race so that people will believe that Black people were inferior, were less evolved, and therefore it wasn't, they could morally justify enslaving Black people because they said that they were less evolved. But anyway, look at my previous videos. I've gone a little bit more detail about that. So what we're really facing is the global elite, not at the top of the food chain, if you will, that are pushing for a new world order. They want to weaken individual nations, America being the strongest nation. And that's why they push an open borders policy. That's why they're pushing the ideology of open borders. And because they are so good at twisting things around, I've heard people say that if you are a patriot, that equates to white supremacy. That's fallacy. That's a lie. That's a deception. It's not true. Patriotism does not equal white supremacy. I'm going to say that again. Loving your country does not equate to white supremacy. Now, I'm sure that there might be people that have a white supremacist ideology or mindset that may be patriots, but by the same token, there's people on all sides of that issue. But ultimately, the ruling elite want to weaken borders, individual borders. And the reason they want to do that is because they are pushing for a one world governmental system. Novus Ordo Seclorum, a new world order, is what they're pushing for. And because of that, they want to weaken individual nations. And the United States is one of the last things standing before them to keep, a one world governmental system. And don't look at China, because the communists are also part of the globalist agenda to promote a one world governmental system. Communists, Marxists, all that other stuff. They want to take over the world. So in any event, these are the people that that the real struggle is against, the global elite. Now, when you understand the global elite and who they are, and I'll refer to them as the global elite throughout this video, but the global elite are made up of families and organizations. Now, go back, fast forward real quick. Most of the things that we face with the global elite stems from Germany. And so you had a group of people that were in Pergamos. The Bible calls it Pergamos, which is ancient Turkey in the Caucasoid regions. And they migrated from there into observed the form of Jewish mysticism. So to know about Jewish mysticism, Israel was in Babylon. They mixed and matched the Babylonian mystery religions with Judaism. And so what you see is it's called Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. And if you understand the practice of Kabbalah, that's what they practiced, right? That's what the Bible refers to as Mystery Babylon. It is the religion, it's the spiritual ideology, it's the wisdom behind the New World Order, Kabbalah. And a lot of Hollywood people, a lot of the elite, they practice this religion. If you see in one of my videos, I talked about the Boule, the Black Boule. LeBron James, who is a Boule member, he has the tattoo on his chest. He practiced Kabbalah. I don't know if he still does, but he had the red. If you see them, many of the Hollywood people or entertainers, they have this red thread around their wrist. That is the designation that they practice Kabbalah. And there's a lot of things to that. I've gone into it, the synagogue of Satan. I've gone into it in some of my previous talks. But anyway, so let's move forward. So when you talk about the global elite, you're talking about families and organizations, So just a couple of the families of note. You have the Rothschilds, which are in charge of the international banking cartel. You have the Rockefeller family, which the Rockefellers were very instrumental in helping to form the United Nations, because the United Nations is an arm of pushing the globalist agenda, right? They're looking for a one world governmental system, a new world order. The land where the United Nations building in New York is on was given by the Rockefellers. I don't know if they gave it to them or if they just gave them a long-term lease or whatever the case may be. But the Rockefellers were very instrumental. So when you start talking about the Rockefeller family, they are part of the global elite families. A couple of others that you may or may not be familiar with. One is the Bush family, and the Bush family originates from Germany. You know, George H.W. Bush, Prescott Bush, and George W. Bush. Their original names was the Scherf family from Germany. And during World War II, they actually got caught up in working with the Nazis and helping to fund some of the Nazis because they all originated from the same place. Also, which might be surprising to many people, the royal family in England is called the Windsor family, where you have the Queen of England and the rest of the family. They're from Germany originally. Their name was Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. Now, this is important for you to understand. The reason they changed their name is because after World War II, when the Nazis in Germany got a very bad reputation, they wanted to distance themselves publicly from the Germans, and they changed their name to the Windsor family. Actually, I think they might have changed their name a little bit earlier, but it was to kind of separate from their true identity. So the Bush family, they're one of the, would fall into the category of some of the global elite families. You know, George H.W. Bush was actually the head of the CIA for a while. The CIA is one of the arms of the globalists. They use the CIA internationally. Of course, you know, the Windsor family is the royal family, and it just shows how they are perceived, the global elite, the royal family. Just because you're born into this family, you are considered elite. And these other families, the same thing. And there's a lot of offshoots families because they married with other families, and primarily they would marry for you know, in order to network and to make connections. So you had like the Vanderbilt, which was they got wealthy off of I guess trains and maybe oil. I'm not sure, but Vanderbilt family. Gloria Vanderbilt is a Vanderbilt. Anderson Cooper, who works for CNN, his mother is Gloria Vanderbilt. He's one of the Vanderbilts. And so anyway, these are some of the ruling elite families. Also, some of the organizations that you may know. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's important to understand who it is, instead of throwing out this broad term of white supremacy and just invoking things. And see, that's part of the confusion and the deflection. And so, hey, Adam, what's up? How you doing, brother? Peace to you. And so what happens is they keep throwing these terms out here. They use the media. It's a form of like mind control and manipulation. And so they throw these terms out here, and it keeps people in a constant state of, you're always fighting an enemy that's not a real enemy. And so therefore, there's no solution. You can never solve a problem. If you don't know who you're fighting against, then you could never win the battle when you're fighting the wrong enemy. And when you don't understand the true nature of the battle, then there's no way that you can succeed. And so that's why it's important for us to understand who it is that people are against. They throw out this term white supremacy, and white supremacy is not it. That's not it. It's this global elite. These organizations too, you should be familiar with. The Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, or CFR, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bohemian Grove, among others. These are organizations that ruling elite work with. So if you're not born in one of the bloodline families, they identify people that are influencers and have talent, and then they pledge their allegiance to these organizations by pledging and therefore pledge their allegiance to the overall, they call it the great work. And many about a century or so ago, they called it the long march forward. And so the long march forward was they were moving towards their goal, which is a one world governmental system, the New World Order. And as they move towards the goal, they take their time. It's multi-generational, and they have many different arms. If you see it, there's a picture you can find out that it identifies it like an octopus. You know, octopus has many different legs or many different branches. And so it's important that you understand the overall picture. So once you understand the overall picture, then you can identify the various nuances of the strategy that they use. A lot of media people, elite media executives are connected with the Bilderberg Group or something. Even some of the religious high-level televangelists and religious leaders are a part of this as well. And so you got to understand that. You got to understand these things, because if you don't, you will and it's multi-layered, and it's very nuanced, the strategies that they use. And I'm going to talk about one in particular. But anyway, let's go back to the United Nations. Now, the United Nations, which is the arm of the New World Order, trying to form a one world governmental system. There's organizations under it. So the organizations under it, like the Rockefeller family, like I said, partially funded it. But the World Health Organization is an arm of the United Nations, and also the Paris Accord, or climate change. The Paris Accord that President Biden just now put the United States back on, and it also drains a lot of resources because the United States ends up paying an unfair amount to this. It is based on the globalist ideology of what's known as sustainable development. So like I said, you have the global elite that are bloodline families or organizations that believe that they are the elite class of humanity. And because they believe that they're the elite class of humanity, they believe that the natural resources of the earth belongs to them, that they have a right to it, and that they should govern over the affairs of humanity. That's what they believe. That's where you get the idea of eugenics from, with Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood and abortion, because some groups of people are less worthy than others. And so that's the whole ideology behind Planned Parenthood. The Nazis, the Rockefeller family, not only originally funded Margaret Sanger and her eugenics movement, but they also funded the Nazis in Germany. And the Nazis also practiced eugenics. Also psychology in Germany. Most modern psychology originated from Germany. Like I said, there's this class of people that migrated into Germany. And so they use psychology in order to spell cast, or to basically social engineer society in a way that everybody follows the pattern that they give you, right? They use media, they use entertainment, they use spokespeople from these various organizations. Also the Rhodes Scholars. So if you ever hear somebody's a Rhodes Scholar, the Rhodes Scholar program is a part of the educational arm of the New World Order. So people like George Stephanopoulos was a Rhodes Scholar, Cory Booker, who was a Rhodes Scholar, and there's many other people that are Rhodes Scholar. Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar, but I don't believe I heard that he didn't. I think I read he didn't finish the program for various reasons. But when you understand these people are promoting the New World Order agenda, they're not, George Stephanopoulos is not unbiased by any stretch of the imagination. And so he's not a journalist, even though he may position himself as a journalist. He is promoting the agenda of the New World Order because he's a Rhodes Scholar. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Rhodes Scholars, it's in England, in Oxford University. Primarily, they go there to study, and it's named after Cecil Rhodes. Cecil Rhodes, who was a person that went and colonized many African nations. And so when you hear the term of blood diamonds, it was some of the African nations that had a lot of diamonds and diamond mines, that Cecil Rhodes, the De Beers Diamond Company, and some of these other globalist organizations went in and colonized it. They would take the natural resources, they would put like warlords in charge, and the warlords would keep the other people, basically through violence and other tactics, they would, keep the people oppressed. So when you go to a lot of these African nations, Africa is like the richest continent as far as natural resources, but many of the nations, the people are among the poorest. So Rhodesia was one of them. They renamed the nation since then to Zimbabwe, but it was originally called Rhodesia, named after Cecil Rhodes. The whole continent of Africa actually is named after a Greek warlord. I think his name is Scipio Africanus or something. I might have his name a little bit wrong. I know his last name is Africanus. Before that, Africa was actually called Acubalon. And Acubalon, many people say, means the Garden of Eden, or Alcubalon, was the original name of Africa before, by the Greek warlord Africanus. And all of these leaders, their job, their goal was world domination, to take over the world, right, and be the world leader. Hey, how you doing, Melissa? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good to see you. And so when you understand sustainable development, getting back to that sustainable development, which is really the Paris Accord is about, they call it, they use the term climate change, but climate change is the, they use these euphemisms, or they use cover stories. So climate change cover story, but the ultimate, if you look at it, is a very long document called the United Nations Sustainable Development Plan. It was called, originally it was called 2020. It was originally called Agenda 21 for the 21st century, but since then they have changed it. They have modified it to now it's called Agenda 2030, because what they're saying is their goal is to have their agenda fully developed by the year 2030, which is why you see like President Biden is in light speed mode. He's in full effect, signing all these executive orders to put back in place the agenda, the globalist agenda, right? So putting us back on the Paris climate agreement, Paris Climate Accord, I should say, is part of the globalist agenda, the New World Order. And so here's what sustainable development is about. As I mentioned, the global elite believe that they are the elite class of people on the earth. They believe that they should rule over humanity, and they also believe that the resources belong to them. This is their ideology. And so what happened was, you've always had this ideology that has been prevalent throughout history. And so with the Industrial Revolution, the population of the earth just increased to such a high degree that they had to change their strategy, because they could no longer overtake people by violent revolutions. In Europe in the 20th century, you had a lot of these violent revolutions. But they couldn't continue to do that, especially with the population growing, and plus it was just too much blood. And so they came up with other strategies. One of the ideologies behind sustainable development is they believe that the population of the earth should only be between 500 million to a billion people. 500 million to a billion people should be the population of the earth. And so, of course, because of that, there's over 7 billion people on the earth. So they came up with things like, even Bill Gates mentioned how they were going to use vaccines to reduce population growth by 10 or 15%, which is why Bill Gates is such an important figure to know and understand about him and his ideology. Sustainable development is about population control and depopulation. That's what it's about. And the Bible talks about this. But anyway, they want to keep the population down, and they also want to control the population by putting them into cities, right? To have people crowded together. And so if you understand that only 5% of the Earth's population, 5% of the Earth's surface is covered with people, you have 95% that's uncovered. Now, some of that may be places that would be difficult to live, but you still have huge amounts of land that is unoccupied by human beings. If you live in America and you drive from here, I used to live in Chicago, from Pennsylvania to Chicago, you could drive for hours and not see a house or land, just flat ground, right? Those are places that people could occupy. And I've heard it said that every person on this earth could live in the country of New Zealand. That's so when they tell you that the planet is overpopulated, they're not saying it's overpopulated because there's no more room for people. They're subconsciously, what they're saying is that the planet is overpopulated for their purposes, right? For their resources and for what they want to do. That's why most wars are fought over land and resources. contrary to what people will tell you, most wars are fought over land and resources. And so anyway, this idea of sustainable development, they keep implanting this idea in people's mind that the planet's overpopulated. So what is the normal suggestion is stop having too many babies, right? Control the population. And this is an ancient practice. They go all the way to Genesis 11. But anyway, I'm going to get back to that. I'm going to close with that thought. But I want you to understand what you're hearing and what you're seeing. So part of their agenda, like open borders, unsecure borders, that's part of the New World Order, globalist ruling elite agenda, because they want to destroy sovereign nations so that it would all be absorbed into a one world governmental system. Sustainable development. They use what's known as critical race theory or racism. That's why you keep hearing white supremacy. When they keep using the term white supremacy, it's a deflection away from the actual people, the enemies of the people that are trying to control the masses and the populations, right? If you look at most large cities, because the liberal agenda has become the New World Order agenda, the platform of the liberals line up point for point almost with the New World Order agenda. And so, yep, that's why China had the one child rule. They would say that it was overpopulated. And if you look in China, it's because they crowded people into cities. All of them were, like, I think it's Taiwan or something. I think it's Taiwan. It has like 22 million people in Taiwan. But then you can go out in the country and you can see miles and miles of land where nobody lives. So this idea of hoarding people together, all together, and telling you it's overpopulated. Now, if you do live in Taiwan, it might be overpopulated. But if you go outside of Taiwan, I'm sure China's a huge nation. You know, if you look at the fact that even in America, like I said, there's a whole bunch of land in America. I've read that every human being, or I should say, every person that lives in America could live in Texas, right? There's enough land in Texas for everybody to have. I think it's a half an acre or a quarter of an acre land, right? You can live comfortably on a quarter acre land, you know, unless you're some big baller that needs a huge mansion. But other than that, but see, these are things that they use the media to promote these ideas, and they keep repeating it over and over again. So if you say that, if you bring out the fact that the climate change or the Paris Accord is all based on sustainable development and population control and depopulation, they try to say, "Oh, you're a science denier." If you try to say something about, you know, we should have secure borders, then what they'll say is, "Oh, you hate other people from other." And just another side note, you know, this whole notion of separating families, and people say, "Oh, that's a horrible thing." The reason that a law was put in place to separate families of people trying to cross illegally was because the southern border of Mexico was one of the main places where human sex trafficking was taking place. And there was a lot of children being illegally trafficked across the border. And so what they would do is, when they would capture these people, they would separate the children from their families until they could identify that these were their parents. And a lot of times when they found out that the person that was bringing them over wasn't their parent, they would hold the child until they could find a real relative. But of course, what is the media doing now? They're trying to say, "Oh, it's horrible and it's inhumane." But they were actually doing that to save children. For those of you who do not know, one of the largest illegal industries in the world, or I should say the largest illegal industry in the world, is sex trafficking, human trafficking. That is the number one. And the reason it's so much more profitable is because of the fact that and this is kind of, I hate to even say these things, but so say, for instance, a lot of times they'll get underage girls, right? They kidnap them, they sell them into sex slavery, right? And so when they sell them into sex slavery, if you have a drug and I sell you a drug, I can only sell it to you one time and make a profit. If you have a person that you're sex trafficking or pimping out, you can make multiple money off of them. So when they come in and a John comes in and pays to be with them, they make money, you know, over them. So it's more profitable than even drugs. It's the number one illegal industry in the world. And so because of that, there was a great issue even in the border. And so when they would capture people illegally coming over, they would separate the children from the adults to confirm the fact that that was actually their parents. And I don't know if they've changed it. Really, no. Up until recently, the age of consent in Mexico was 12. The age of consent for sex was 12 years old in Mexico. So it was a whole different thing. But anyway, I want you to understand that we want to see through the deception, see through the lies of the ruling elite, so that we can be aware and not be taken advantage of. But anyway, until next time, this is Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 move. Please subscribe, please like, and please share the video if you find value in it. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. Love you guys.